Hey everybody, it's Tafony once again. Hope you're doing well. Today we're rambling about the Schlappi Engineering Three Body. It is a beast of a triple oscillator with a focus on FM and feedback, phase modulation, and more, and it sounds like this. Okay, I've been really nervous about the three-body episode. I want to get a couple things out of the way before we get started here. One, FM synthesis and the three-body by extension are really deep. There's a lot of depth there. They're really challenging to talk about for anybody, much less an idiot like me. So I'm definitely going to miss things, and I'm probably going to misdescribe some aspects of it, but I think it'll give you at least some idea what you're going to be looking at when you get into this as a beginner. If you're already advanced, you already know the three-body in and out, then you probably don't need to hear me talk about it anyway. So we're just going to try our best and have a lot of fun on the way, because a lot of, too, with like anything in Eurorack, and when Schlappi in the manual describes the three-body as like an analog interface, I think that really speaks to like how fun it is to just grab it and play. I know the like tweakability and playability and the like exploration aspects are like, you know, adjectives that are thrown around so much in your rack. When it comes to the three body, I just mean to say that like you don't need to understand every aspect of FM synthesis to love the three body, to enjoy what it has to offer, to do the crazy feedbacking, to get some FM modulation going and all that, and I certainly won't. So if you're coming here for the scientific method, then there's definitely better videos by Eric and Stasma and many others, but this channel is just here to have fun and check it out. So that we shall do. Now, the three body is essentially three identical oscillators, at least identical under the hood, I believe. The middle oscillator has a couple different extra outputs and I believe an added input as well. We're going to start there because usually that's the one I think about hearing, but the three body doesn't limit you to algorithms or you know, operator configurations like something, I don't know, like a DX7 would. Not that it has as many operators as a DX7, but it kind of leaves everything up to you. And that includes having 14 outputs for all the different waveforms across the three operators, which is crazy. There's no mixed output, so you better bring a mixer. With all that being said, let's start by looking at the first oscillator independently. If we go into the free mode, sort of the design language of the three body is that of like switching the switches will change what each knob does, and they're labeled with both. So in the top position, you see coarse on the top, coarse tune just like any other VCO, and then below it the fine tune just like any other analog or digital VCO, just normal stuff. There is an exponential slash phase and linear switch here. We're not doing any of that yet, so it won't change anything. And then on this side, it's a high slash mult versus div slash low. So in this one, we're in LFO mode. You'll see it cycling here. You won't hear anything because it's out of audio rate, but if we go back up, you'll see that. So now this all behaves differently in the ratio mode, so we'll switch over to that. And I believe we're not hearing anything right now because we need to bring in some modulation. So I'm going to try in this video. Most of the demos I watched were very drony and just sort of exploring all the different patches, but I am going to try and keep it musical later on, but just like those other videos, I'm going to start droning, talking about the internal patching and stuff that's going on. So that's basically the meat and potatoes of each oscillator, right? Do you want it at audio rate, or do you want it at LFO? Do you want it free, or do you want to do ratios? And then you get tons of different outputs. On the middle VCO, we do get cosine output. The other ones just have sine. And then also cos-saw output, which I really like because you can do crazy stereo effects with that, and I love my super saws. That also adds a little depth because there's two inputs. If you have them phase shifted 90 degrees, I believe it is, then just even more depth to the heart of the swarm, if you will. Back into the sine. So they are digital oscillators, and to me, that means you don't have to worry about the tuning. It means that they can track accurately. I understand that the actual line between what is an analog oscillator and what is a digital one is actually not as straightforward as it seems. And in the case of the three body, I understand the FPGA design of this is actually like super unique. That is way above my pay grade, but if that's something that interests you and I'm introducing you to that, definitely check it out. Don't miss out on that. I met someone one time who was like, we were talking about synthesizers, and so I was talking about that 3340, and the person was like, oh, that's cool, but I don't like digital oscillators. And like 3340 is the classic analog oscillator, and I get that they were probably just confused, but it did have me thinking about sort of like, yeah, I mean, it's a chip, like how analog is it, right? Well, it's about as analog as any digital VCO is going to get, but it always just makes me sort of think like, yeah, and I know like in the guitar pedal world, people always say like analog is questionable because it's all, even if it's all super hand soldered and through board, I think only outside of like the most primitive effects, everything has a microchip. Anyway, we're getting derailed, but this is what we do on a show called Rambling About. Now, going back to the three body and its sort of design language, what you'll see on here in the parentheses, there's sine 1 on this side and sine 3 on this side. This is sort of like a VCA for how much you want the other oscillators to modulate. So this is our phase index. And if I miss the opportunity later on in this video to, due to my own getting too distracted, three body sounds excellent. And furthermore, to my confusion about things too, I understand that FM and phase mod are generally used kind of interchangeably, right? Like phase distortion too, it's all kind of blurry. Like some strictly through zero FM oscillators are technically phase modulation, but still just describe it as FM. On the three body, there is both FM and phase mod. So keep that in mind. We have phase index on here, which is internal to the left oscillator. And if I'm looking at that as basically just like a carrier and an operator, if we go into our first one, we are in free mode. So you'll hear it's not quantized in any way. It's not snapping to different ratios. This is sort of the things that I would hear on like, I don't know, Brinso or any other complex oscillator. But if you switch it over to ratio mode now, you'll hear it stepping. And this makes it really easy to do FM stuff. This reminds me of like the digitone when you're changing those ratios up. Now there's no filter or anything on here. I understand that like the DX7 didn't need a filter, it just kind of modulated things in such a crazy way that it did. We will get to using one later in the video, but for now, just raw audio coming out. And on that note as well, FM mode not getting modulated in FM anymore. If we go over to low mode, we need to change our divisions here so you can make it kind of warble, right? And I really like this territory. A lot of the demos I watch for this one, people are really up in these shrill territories. I know it makes it easier to hear, but like, where's the heft? So here's getting ahead of myself. I won't talk about the next part in a bit. It's really, really easy when you're wiggling knobs on the three body to just get into noise territory because it'll feed back. And I don't mean audio output into audio input. I mean you end up very quickly modulating the operators basically with themselves by modulating them cross mod back into the main oscillator. So we'll get into all that. But just to say on here, the different knobs in the parentheses will show you the normalizations. So with nothing patched in to the FM index, this will actually take the sine from the middle, the oscillator 2. So again, we're very quickly getting in to cross mod, right? Because these two things are modulating each other, right? And what I've liked so far, putting the first oscillator in free mode, putting it in low mode, so we get like an LFO of sort of like a slow pulsing macro control. Yeah. And this all applies to all the other waveforms too, right? So here comes our triangle. I know. FM, that's the other thing that I'm always like, when I was starting, I didn't really love FM that much because I'd hear things like this and be like, why would I want like weird portamental or warbling? Well, the reason is because when you get up to audio rate, by doing that, you get unique new timbres, right? So with that being said, I like to put this one in LFO mode, so we'll go down to low, and it won't change too much just yet, but what I want to do is use our third oscillator. On this side, we'll bring that in on the phase index, and this one can go up to audio rate, and we'll do ratio, so we can find something nice musical. Bring the middle one down a little bit because I want to hear it in a lower range. Again, I like that low end heft. And normalization's on the outside to FM index, so we're going to modulate this third one at audio rate from the second cosine. And we almost get PWM territory. And if you can find it, let me know, but I was reading a Mod Wiggler thread that was talking about like lack of PWM on the three body, and I'm just sort of like, there are so many timbres and craziness that like, I just would never look to the three body for a single square wave, if that makes sense. It does have a square wave output on each oscillator, but it's also clockable is another crazy thing, so I always complain about lack of clocked LFOs. You could actually use the three body as a triple LFO and just clock it in, right? Which I think is really cool. And it's not reset, it'll actually be clocked. Anyway, we are using our FM index on that side. Phase it up, go into audio rate as well on here. And these timbres, I'm telling you. So now it's FM, the first one, because it's normal to different phase modulations. But if we take, I don't know, triangle and put that in the FM, triangle from the first oscillator. I almost wish this was the normalization over the phase index, but I mean, that's the point of modular. You can do whatever you want with the use of patch cables. So here, let's take out basically everything, right? So here's just our straight up sine. No internal modulation of the phase. Taking my triangle wave from that first oscillator into my FM. All the way down, in it goes. We'll bring it up here in ratio mode so we can get some musical intervals. And I don't mean quantized to like the Western scale, I mean like ratios they're useful for frequency modulation. So here's tons. And here's the different modes for FM. So right now we're in exponential. Here's linear. Again, I rarely would leave the exponential, but it's there. We bring in some other sources. So I'm FMing and phase modding it now, which is awesome. If I switch this over to use the triangle from the other oscillator, I can use this one on this side in LFO mode, which I am actually pretty inclined to do most of the time. Switch that over there. I'm going to switch it into free mode. It's not clocked or anything. We're not sequencing it for that matter, but then I can take my triangle output here and then modulate the phase index. So it's all the way off. And now my LFO will bring it in. Right? What if I do phase 2? Audio rate the phase 2 itself, not even the index, and then audio rate the index of the phase. And again, realistically, when you're in a patch, when you're exploring this, you're thinking about all of these things, or at least I am. you're thinking about all of these pieces, but it really is a matter of twisting until it sounds interesting, right? And if you love nasty, crazy timbres that just like go to the limit of being white noise and then pulling back a little bit, then I think you'll love the Three Body like I do. Like, listen to that. It sounds like wave folding. I keep coming back to this one thing that was mentioned to me by a close friend of mine, that like that FM at its best points is kind of like using audio rate to like glitch out oscillators. Well, if that's true, then Three Body is like my heaven. We'll send a random into the phase 2. Maybe into the phase 2 index. And honestly, I just like... I recognize using either wavetables or wave folders, you kind of can get to a lot of these points other ways. But here, Three Body offers a really unique way to do so. So, that like, I don't know, fuzzy overtone that I hear, those harmonics, some of my favorites. So we are going to put a sequence. This is super fast. Maybe I'll slow it down a little bit before we do. But there's 2 inputs. So there's volt per octave on every oscillator. You could independently use all of these. I love it. I absolutely love how it sounds. You could use these all independently to like make chords, essentially, right? And just as completely independent oscillators, they all have their own volt per octave. But I believe, so listen how it changes things, right? Because we're listening to the center oscillator, the second one. You hear that when we sequence the first oscillator, which is, in our case, changing the phase 1 and modulating the phase, then you get different timbres, right? Because we're not changing the oscillator itself. I mean, we are changing the pitch itself, but here's if we send that to the oscillator itself. But I believe if we plug into the transpose input, yep, so this will send that volt per octave to all 3 oscillators. That's where the ratio is really powerful, is because you can change the timbres at sort of like a macro level, right? Here's the mult and the div. And just like complex oscillators, I find if you put more modulation in, you often need to pitch it down a little bit to tame it, I guess. And maybe we'll just use a little less FM. Just to tame it. I'll take my FM out, actually. I think what we do want to do for sure, though, is run this into a low-pass gate, my beloved. Let's do that. We're going to keep monitoring on the oscilloscope the output of the oscillators, but afterwards there will be our low-pass gate. Let's listen to that now. So that's the steady-state gate. Sounds really nice. Just a little bit of wave folding. Little bit more low pass. I don't know if your East Coast versus West Coast is on your mind, but like, this is like no coast, I guess. Not that no coast, but something wild. So that's just the cosine. What if we listen to the saw? Yes. There's tons of phase. FM's not normal to anything, so it won't change anything, but new shapes. Cosaw. Square. I didn't even think about FMing a square or phase modding it for that matter. I think... No, that's the thing about the DX7 doesn't sound like a sine wave, right? Because it's so complex, like what's being done to it, that like, yeah, this isn't, you know, you get those bell tones, those round edges, but that shape is not dull at all. If I fold it too on the side of the gate, yeah. More FM. Ooh, some cross-mod FM. What if we just send that Voltbra octave into the second one? That actually sounds nice too. In comes my kick. Yeah. And we just drone with it. Let's do some FM. Oh, interesting too that the internal patching of sine 2 to this FM index, you know, the linear versus exponential switch applies there as well, which totally makes sense. But see, we're very much into white noise territory. Yeah. And we're only listening to one output, so on that note, let's pause this for a second. I think we better mix some of this together. So my thinking usually with these things is that I want to listen to just one oscillator, but we are going to try and jump around with it a little bit. So in goes a couple different things. Oh, the sequence. So 2 outputs now. Let's see how cosine. Reach. Let's do cosine out. No, square. Fatten it up. So just the square. Here's just the saw. Just the sine. Mix them all in. Yeah, there we go. Use that saturation circuit on the steady state fate. Yeah. Just droning it out. Let's try some pitch now. Try just Voltbra octave into the center one. I kind of like that. I like how when it crosses over the, you know, when it gets further from the pitch, the ratios are changing, right? Which might not exactly make it musical, but doesn't make it nice and raunchy. Makes it sound glitchy. And I really like that. I don't know how accurately it's tracking pitch, though. Something to consider. Let's go in and throw the triangle wave in. FM's out, phase out. So here's just a mix of all of them. Phase in. A little less. Yeah. Sorry, I know this probably is really not to many people's taste, but I just love being in that territory. Speed this one up. Try a different sequence actually. Let's go this one. Bring it up a little bit in BPM. Oh yeah. Yeah, the phase mod. Yes. I kind of like the performative aspect of it too. Transpose in. I don't know, maybe it's just my settings, but sending that vocal octave not into the transpose, but into the oscillator we're listening to. Sounds really nice. What if I use a square wave from somewhere else instead? Here comes our other waveforms. See, we're definitely in the noise territory. Yes. Bring some more kicks in, let's go. Alright, I'm Tafony. I really love the Three Body. I've yet to hear something bad about it. And I think that's for good reason. Drop something bad about it in the comment. See what I said before about the noise. Alright, thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, do all that crap. The YouTube does on my case, but not promoting to you. I'll see you in the next video.